So let's do some more configuration and go through some more commands. We're going to open up GNS. We're going to add our router that we've put in there, and then we're going to start it. And then we'll also bring up the console. One nice thing with this little button up here is you can do console to all your routers and switches you have, or you can just do just the one if you right click on it and go to console. So this thing's booting up. It's going to take just a second. Alright, there we go. So let's go into configuration mode. Be nice if I could type. There we go. Config T, and let's change the host name. So you're going to do that with host name and then whatever you want. So this could be test router. And it'll change the prompt for you to let you know that that's your new host name. Something else that would be interesting to do and useful to do is let's change some passwords. Right now it's very insecure. You get access to it, and you know it's able to be configured right away. We don't want that necessarily. So let's set an enable password. You know how when I went from disable to enable, it automatically jumped me in there, no questions asked? So let's set a password for that. We can do that using an enable password or an enable secret. And if we do an enable password, it's non-encrypted in the config in the configuration. So if you go and look in running config or startup config, it will show that password in the config. So if someone ever looks over your shoulder or gets a hold of the config file, they can see that. There is a way of encrypting that password, but it does so in a poor manner that can be decrypted. So it's not really all that useful, except for preventing someone from looking over your shoulder at least. Or we could use enable secret, which uses a higher quality level of encryption and cannot be broken. So let's do the enable password method first so you know how that works, and then we'll do the enable secret. So if we do enable password, we can basically type whatever password we want. Don't worry about the 0 and the 7 options. If you just type whatever it is you want as your password, it will turn that into the password for you. You don't have to worry about 0 or 7. If you want to, though, you would type password 0 because it's the unencrypted that we're going to be typing. So if you just do it without, it'll just work. So enable password Cisco. So now it's set my enable password. If I do show run, it'll show you here my enable password. I want to show you something else as well. You can do pipe, and you can do additional commands. So I can pipe inc to include, inc is for include, pipe include enable. And what that'll do is it'll go through the entire config and show me any lines that should start with enable. You can also do things such as section. You could say section interface or something like that. There's some additional commands you can do with that. And actually, let's back out, and I'll show you that. So show run pipe, and then here's some additional commands you can do. You can do include. You can do section. It's kind of like grep. If you're used to Linux, you can say, you know, list out all this stuff, but grep for the following word. That's kind of the similar idea. Another one that's useful is begin. So you could do show run begin enable, and that will ignore everything above whatever it is we just typed. So that's useful for interfaces. So I could do show run begin interface, and that's going to not show me all the stuff in the config until we hit the word interface, and now it's going to show me all my interface config info. It's actually really handy. But you can see the problem here, though, is if I don't choose begin and I choose include, it's just going to show the actual lines that say interface. So get used to playing with some of those. They make navigating the giant config file much more palpable. When you get into some of the switches where there's like 48 ports to config, and the config files get huge. So being able to navigate through the config files with this method is very useful. So anyway, let's go back to our password stuff. So you saw that the password was shown in the config. So there's my password. If someone got a hold of this file, they could say, oh, well, there's his password, no big deal. I'll just get in there. So let's try and, you know, subvert that. Let's prevent this. So what we're going to do is go into config mode. That would be useful. And we're going to do service password encryption. If we do service password encryption, it's now going to try and encrypt that password. So now it's going to say enable password 7, remember that 0 or 7? And then, oh look, now it's encrypted, you can't see it. Problem is, you can put that into things that are available online and you can decrypt those. So, you know, we could go over here and we can do Cisco password decrypt. And just find some random one. We're going to paste it in there. Oh look, there's my password. That's not very helpful, is it? So if they get a hold of my config, I'm doomed anyway. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get rid of this password. This is not very helpful to us. So no enable password. And then if we do show run again, we're just going to make sure that that's gone. And yep, there's no password in there anymore. So let's do a real password. So what we're going to do is say enable secret. Enable secret means it's a higher quality level password. And now we're going to type Cisco. Now if I show my running config, look at this crazy thing. This doesn't work if you paste it into one of those decryption sites. So this is not only encrypted from prying eyes, but it's also encrypted in a manner that if someone gets a hold of your config file, they can't decrypt it. It's very, very difficult. So you don't have to worry about it then. We can also set a password for our console. So I'm connected through the console. It's virtual, but it's still the real console. But you know, not most people don't put a password on their console, which is probably a good idea, especially if you have different tier level of people who have access to wherever your switches are and routers are held. So if you have like tier 1 type support people in there, and then you also have you know, some executives wandering around in that closet for some reason, and then yourself, well, you might want to put a password on that console in case someone tries to get clever and mess with your devices, because otherwise they're just going to get right in there just like I am. So let's go in and set a password for that. So in order to do that, we have to go into the console line. The console line is what they call it for the console connection. So we're going to go line console 0, and you can shorten that again by doing like line con 0. And the 0 defines, I'll back out one so you can see it. The 0 defines how many lines, how many console connections. If we had more than one console connection, it might say like 0 to 1. So we're making this configuration on just the only available console connection, that's number 0. So in line console 0, we're going to set a password. Now this is not encrypted, it's not a secret, so we're setting just a normal password. Password is Cisco. Now if I do show run and we go down here, take a look for my console, there it is. We now have a password set. And this is using that, we still have service password encryption turned on, so it's still hiding it from prying eyes, but obviously you can decrypt it if you want. So that's where it's useful to have your console drop you into a lower level privilege, and then you have to type enable to get up into the secure configuration area, and then have that set with a secret, because then even if someone gets a hold of this and gets in with the console, they can only do show commands and they can't mess with things. So, but anyway, we've set our password and we have to set login. If we don't tell it that we need login, then it's not going to check for a password really. It's not going to prompt us. So login means prompt me please. Let's also set one for our VTY. Our VTY is for Telnet or SSH connections, or virtual terminal connections. And you can do that by going into the terminal, setting the password, and doing login just like we did with the console. But one thing I want to show you is I'm in line console 0 right now. See how it says config-line? I can do line VTY and then the number of virtual connections I want to configure. So we're going to do 0 through 15. So the first 16 connections we are configuring. And these are the consecutive connections. So if one person connects, they're on VTY 0. If another person connects remotely, they're on VTY 1, and so on and so on. So it's pretty common to configure 0 to 15. That's like the default that a lot of people use. So, but what you can see here is I'm switching from my console to my line VTY config right from within it, and boom, I'm over in another configuration area. I'm on a different branch, but the actual prompt in there says config line. So make sure you notice that, because it says config line, but I might have forgotten that I typed line VTY and I thought I was in the console. So you have to keep your head in the game when you're jumping between different branches of the hierarchy of the configuration mode. If you're not sure, just back out and then go back in. If you don't know where you were, just go back in and say, okay, now I'm in the right spot, because you don't want to go configuring something that's not what you think it is, because you can lock yourself out of the device and cause problems. So let's go into line VTY 015. Although doing this is useful for when you're trying to save time, because you can just jump from one to another to another to another, and as long as you know where you are, it makes it faster for you. So we're going to configure our line VTY, and we can do that with password and whatever it is we want to make it, and then just make sure you type login, and that'll prompt them for a login. And we'll just exit out of that. And you know what we'll do is we'll exit all the way out. Now that I've exited all the way out of my console connection, we've defined a password and a login. See, now it's prompting me, so this is good. If I put in my password, it'll let me in. So that's pretty cool. It does not show you the password as you type it. It doesn't show little asterisks. So you'll be typing and it will show nothing on that password field as you saw. That's normal. It's okay. Just keep typing your password, push enter. It'll all work out well. So now we're into our device again. And let's go and configure a banner. So this is something we can do. You can do a login banner or a message of the day. So let's go into configuration terminal. And a message of the day is shown to all connections. The login message is shown only to the people who have login defined. So if you connect over VTY right now or console, since we said login, it'll be shown to them then. So you can have like console not set with the login password. Well, he's not going to see the login message. So if we did not have login password set on our console, then he wouldn't get the login message. But everyone will get the message of the day. So that way you can specify some sort of administrative note as the message of the day, saying, or you could set the administrative note as the login message, saying, hey, maintenance is going to happen on Friday. Be aware. So that the people who are accessing know that. But you could have a message of the day which shows to everybody saying unauthorized access only or something like that. You can mix it up with what you want to show. So what we're going to do is we're going to set one of those. So we're going to do banner message of the day. It's actually done in acronym. And then we're going to configure some sort of character. You want to use a character that's not going to be used in your message, because if you use that character, then it's going to stop the message. So you can use something like pound or $sign or something like that. So as long as you don't use pound anywhere in your message, then you're fine. So message of the day, this is my router, stay away. So you can make this pretty freeform. You can use ASCII characters of all sorts. You can put spaces, it doesn't matter. It only looks for that delimiting character. So now we're going to say pound, and that's the end of my message. I push enter and it sets the message of the day. Now I'm going to set a login. If I set a login, I'm going to do pound, and I'm going to say, hey you, why are you logging in? we'll do it without a question mark because it's why are you logging in? Alright, I'm yelling at you. So there's my login message. So now if I exit out, there it says my message of the day, hey, this is my router, stay away. And now it's saying the login, because we're doing both here. It's showing everyone and we're doing a login prompt, so it's showing the login message. Hey you, why are you logging in? And I'm going to say, oh, whatever, Cisco. And we're getting ourselves in. So that's the two type of banners that you can configure. A lot of times in larger environments you'll see things such as unauthorized access, you're accessing this device, certain legal necessities will occur, etc., etc. You may have to contact your legal department to determine what they want. I've mentioned saving before, so now that we've done this configuration, we can either do write or WR, or you can do copy, run, start, because right now all this configuration is only in our running config, not in the startup config. Don't make the mistake of going, oh good, everything's fine, and we're going to close out here, and it's all gone, and oh man. So make sure you save. Make sure you save. That's something you're going to get probably paranoid about. Is I sit there and I type WR constantly, probably more so than I should. It's just a habit. So there we go. We're going to write our config, and there we go. It's saved, so I don't have to worry about it. Another command that's very useful is reload. So if you want to reboot the device, it's not reboot like you might do, or if you're a Linux person, shut down -R now or something like that. You have to do reload. So it's a different term to remember, but if you do reload, it'll say, are you sure? And say, yeah, it's okay. This is in production, it's fine. And now it's going to reboot the device. If you want to, if you have something you've configured and you want to reload it for some reason, that's what you use, just reload. So maybe you messed up your config on your running config and it's just totally botched up and you're like, let's just reload this thing. That's what you'll use. Let's open our console again. I might have killed it. Might be a Dynamips issue here. That's okay, we'll just stop it and we'll just start it again. It's fine. There we go. Might have to look into that. It's probably some sort of a Dynamips GNS bug or something. So no big deal. But reload is what you're looking to do. I've mentioned the erase and delete commands already, so we won't go over those again, but the erase command is for the config file. Remember that's your NVRAM it's going to erase. Either the config file or the actual file system itself. And the delete command is used for flash memory. So remember that looked a little different. Erase your file system or your config file. Delete some sort of file off of your flash. So that's really what it's used for. We can also TFTP files back and forth. And when we go to do that, it's one of the commands not only useful for the erase and delete, but also for when you're copying something, you want to make sure you copy the right file. So remember to use your show commands. You can look inside your storage with the show commands, show flash, show NVRAM even. Oh, I'm sorry, not on this one. But you can show flash and it'll show your files that are available to copy. So what we want to do is start that up. So what we're going to do is copy a config file from the router to my computer. And since this is virtualized, that's kind of a problem because it's running in its own little world. So how do we get to it? Because right now it doesn't have any IP address. If we do show IP int brief, nothing's set up. How do we get it on my network? So by now you know my network scheme, so we're going to have to figure out how to get it on there. GNS has a cool way of doing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a cloud, the mysterious cloud. We're going to configure the cloud. Go to C1 and choose your interface. So I have a couple here because I have some virtualization stuff, but choose your real interface. And so mine says like Realtek something something local area connection. So we want to choose that and then click add. It'll add it into this list. So that adds it as an interface on the cloud. So we've now created an interface on this mysterious cloud which links to my real interface on my computer. So you kind of see where we're going with this? We're now going to add a connection from my fast Ethernet on this router up into the cloud, which connects to my local area connection. Now we're going to go into this device and we're going to give it an IP address. So we're going to go into, I connected it to fasteth 0/0, so we're going to go into there. I'm going to give it an IP address, and it's going to be an IP address that is on my network, so I have to make sure I don't overlap with something else that I have out there. So I'm going to give it a real IP address on my private network. I'm going to give it a subnet mask, and I'm going to tell it to no shutdown, turn it on. It'll say okay, yep, configured, interface is up, all is good. Remember I was talking about traceroute and ping and stuff that we could do before to do testing? You can do that on the routers and the switches as well. So we can do ping, and we can ping some sort of location out there. So let's try and ping something local. 192.168.77.151. Look at that, it worked. See how it did this? This is a common thing you'll see with Cisco routers. The first ping will not work. The dot means failure. The exclamation point means good. So your failure rate was 1 out of 5. If you do it again, everything's fine. It always does this. When you're pinging something new, it always does this. Always. Oh, I've never seen one not do this. So just be aware that there's going to be that little delay the first time you try it, and you're going to go, what? It's not working? And then quarter second later, it's fine. It always does this. Whether it's virtualized or physical, it will always do this. So it's pinging out to my computer. Let's try and ping my default gateway. And there's that delay. Oh yeah, everything works. Pinging out to my gateway. Okay, this is great. Man, I have a virtual system that's on my network. Let's ping Google. Why isn't that working? Oh, we're getting all sorts of dots. That's not good. Dot, dot, dot. Let's take a look at why this isn't working. So no, that didn't work. I can ping my local network. Why can't I get anywhere else? We haven't talked about routing really, but go look at our routes. I don't know how to get to that network. No gateway. That's my problem. So what we need to do then is add a gateway. And I'm getting ahead of myself here, but let's make a gateway. And we're going to go to, whoops, would help if I was in config mode, right? There we go. Now we have a gateway of last resort. So now if I try to ping out to 8.8, look at that, it works. So everything works the way we're expecting. So now that I didn't even need to make the default route, but you saw that I was able to ping my actual gateway and my own PC from this virtual router. So let's actually do what we came to do. Go and open up TFTP. Hopefully you have it installed by now. So I'm using the 64-bit version. Go in and choose your server interface. So choose the real interface that you have. It's probably going to default to your loopback if you have a loopback set up on your system. Choose the real interface that's on your computer. Go into the settings, uncheck the junk you don't want. We're just going to leave TFTP server set up, and change your base directory. So go to that TFTP tab, change your base directory to somewhere that has write privileges, because right now it's going to try and do that in my program files folder, which it does not have permissions to do. So go choose like your desktop or something. It's going to choose that. Okay, that's okay. Say okay, it's going to say alright, you got to restart stuff. That's fine, whatever. Let it run. Now it's set up and working. Some of the older versions of TFTP, if you have it set up still, you had to go into settings and tell it to start the service. You don't have to do that anymore. So now we're going to copy from our router, our virtual router, a file to my PC. So what we're going to do is we're going to say copy, let's say the running config, and we're going to copy that to TFTP. It's going to say, well, where do you want to send that? I'm going to send it to my PC because that's the IP of my computer. Is this what you want to name it? And by default it uses the host name as part of the naming system for the config file. I'm going to say, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Oh, look at that. Boom, boom. It showed up. There's my file. And then if I open that with a file viewer that can view that kind of file, look at that. There's my config file. I'm using Notepad++ here because it has the ability to handle Unix and Windows text files. The end of line is different. So now we can see my config file. That's pretty cool. Notice here it's got the bang bang again, the exclamation points. It does this for every so many bytes. It'll show a bang. When you're copying large files, you'll have tons of this scroll across the screen, and that's normal. If you're seeing exclamation points, that's a good thing. So now we have our file. It's a great way of backing up your configuration files. You can just TFTP it off somewhere. There's software out there like Kiwi, that's cat tools that can do things like this automatically. There's other stuff out there as well. So now we can transfer files to and from our computer, which is really neat. And now we can send files to it, we can upgrade its iOS, we can back up our config. That's something you want to do. And some of this was specific to GNS on our PC here with making this cloud, but if it was a real device, you could just say TFTP, make sure it's running on some computer out there, and you're good to go. You might have to turn off your Windows firewall. In this example, I had already opened up, when you open up TFTP for the first time, it'll say, do you want to allow this connection on your network? And you can say, yeah, sure, and it adds a firewall rule for you. Some of them, like XP or something, you might have to turn off the firewall. So just be aware of that. If it's not working, try turning off your local firewall, your software firewall, if that's an issue. Some other things we're going to want to do going forward with switching. I mentioned the delete command, and I'll show this again when we get to it, but with the switches, we need to occasionally delete the VLAN database, which is the configuration file that includes all of our VLANs, which we'll be getting into going forward. And in order to do so, you basically just say delete flash and then VLAN.dat. So I don't have this on here because it's a router, but that's the idea. And I'll go over that in the future as well.